All right, everyone. Good afternoon. And thank you for joining for our final webinar of Global Success Month. And what a month it's been. With different webinars, our in-person global breakfast, and information and facts that we shared on social media, I hope that you feel a little bit more prepared to break into the real estate global market. As Global Success Month comes to a close, we are joined by real estate practitioner and expert Gonzalo Mejia, who is here to help you get your global real estate transactions to close. If you have any questions or comments throughout the webinar, please put them in the chat or use the Q&A feature to be addressed later on. Gonzalo is a 19-year veteran of the real estate industry. He has been an agent, a broker associate, managing broker, and now team leader of the Dream Home team in Jacksonville, Florida, where they are one of the top producing teams in their market. One of their specialties is global business and have worked with customers from all over the world. Gonzalo has a background in financial controlling and used to work for multinational companies in USA and South America. With over 25 years of experience as an instructor and speaker, Gonzalo is a licensed real estate instructor in Florida and is an approved instructor for REBAC, RRC, REBI, and the Florida Realtors. He has been a featured speaker at several national and international events. Please help me give a warm welcome and welcome to the screen, Gonzalo Mejia.
Awesome. Hey, Evan, thank you, everybody. It's my pleasure to be here. I see some familiar faces or names, as I cannot see your faces, but in my mind, I see your faces, and you all look beautiful, by the way. Amazing group, Evan. You only have beautiful people in here. But I see Aldo over there. I see Guy. I see Yoshi. So thank you for joining us, and for everybody else, a pleasure to have you. So we have a lot to cover, and it is 1 hour. So we're going to have to go through it. If you have any questions, again, put them on the Q&A. I'll be more than happy to address. If I don't answer right away, don't worry. I'll try to get to all of them. I try to get the content first, but I'm going to keep paying attention to the questions in case there is something that we need to address during the session. So like Evan said, I am Gonzalo Mejia. I am a realtor. I'm also the chair or Florida Realtors chair of our global business committee. And I'm your NAR vice chair of diversity, which is very close also to our global community. And I was a member of the NAR global team for several years. So glad to bring some of my experiences on that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to start going through the topic. So I know that you have been having a series of webinars throughout the month, and you have been learning already about some global practices, why global business can be helpful. So I'm not going to cover a lot of that. And we're going to try to get more into the practice of international real estate. However, just as a reminder, why this is important, benefit of working with global customers, of course, the additional transactions. That is more customers. You're expanding your reach, but not staying just, with customers here in the US or your local market, but going abroad. Usually, international transactions tend to be of a higher price point than the average transaction here in the US. So you also have, higher price point, which relates many times to higher commissions. Cash transactions are more common, okay? I know that all of us prefer cash transactions over finance transactions. Well, I shouldn't say all of us. There are some people out there who enjoy the struggle and, no, Gonzalo, give me the finance one. I want to, work really hard. But I think most of us can appreciate, those cash transactions that really make the process easier. And there are so many more referrals. For those of you who practice in the global arena, you are aware that many times one transaction doesn't end there. It leads to more. Sometimes by the same customer, sometimes by just friends and family that they let them know about what they are practicing abroad, the transactions they are completing. Like I have worked with this customers from Argentina, and when after I sold in the first house, probably I lost count, but probably I have sold them like around 14, 15 houses since then. But everything started with one. Marisol, it is being recorded. Yeah, it is being recorded. Now, there are also some challenges when dealing with international customers. You know, I would love to tell you, oh, it's so easy and you're gonna make lots of money, and you know there is no challenges whatsoever, but that's not the truth. So what are some of the challenges of working with global customers? Number one, you need to have some experience. Transactions might not work the same way, so you need to educate yourself. Now, good thing, you are here today, you've been attending this series of webinars, probably or hopefully you're taking more classes, you're earning your CIPS designation, Certified International Property Specialist. But it does require that you acquire additional knowledge. Lending issues, I told you that many of the transactions with global customers are going to be cash, but some of them are going to be financed. Now, financing for foreign buyers is available. Many lenders offer this financing. However, the rules are going to be different. Depending what country they're coming from, it might be very easy for them. Like, for example, some lenders are going to require to have a credit report for whatever country they live in. And in other countries, it might be something easy to get, while in other ones can be more challenging. So lending can be a problem for those kind of situations. Taxation, and we're going to cover about that today. You know, they get taxed differently, and there are specific tax regulations to apply to foreign owners and foreign sellers. Currency exchange. So right now, I hope you know this. If not, it's something you need to keep track of. Like right now, the US dollar has gotten stronger. I would say compared a year ago, probably in the last month, actually, it has slightly weakened. But a few months ago, actually, we got to the point where the dollar and the pound was almost 1-to-1. So it goes really strong, and that, while that can be beneficial in some cases, it makes it challenging for some international customers because it makes more expensive to buy a property here in the US. Like I was in Colombia last year for the Latin American Real Estate Convention, and I talked with some agents there, and they said, like, hey, we have people interested in buying in the US, but because of the exchange rate, right now, it's extremely difficult, and interest rates also went up. So exchange rate got harder, interest rate got steeper. So it was like a double hit in some of the international customers. So that's something that you have to keep an eye on. If, you know, or when the dollar weakens, that's going to open opportunities for more foreign buyers to come here and feel they're getting a better deal. And of course, something to keep in mind is cultural differences. So we're going to cover on some of these today. Now, first, where to find customers, okay? Because, oh, Gonzalo, great, I know how to deal with international customers now, but where do I find them? So number one, I will say, start locally. Pay attention to your own communities. What nationalities, what cultural groups are already present in your market. I was telling you about this investor from Argentina that I have sold them, 14, 15 houses. I didn't travel to Argentina to find them. Okay, I did not promote myself in Argentina to find these customers. You know how I found them? Because they had one of their sons attending a university in my city. Back then I was in Pensacola, currently I'm in Jacksonville. So their son was attending UWF, University of West Florida. And it just happened that my assistant back then was going to the same school. So they knew each other, and they said, hey, my parents are interested in buying a property here since I'm here already and I'm familiar with the area. And that's how I got them. So a lot of your international customers are already here or have some connection here. Like I can tell you, and I was telling this Evan before we got started, After we're done today with you guys, I have to finish packing because I'm flying down to Peru this afternoon. The reason I'm going there is personally, we are looking to buy a property in Peru as an investment property. But while I am there, I'm gonna connect actually from some family members of mine who are looking actually to buy here in Jacksonville. Why Jacksonville? Because I am here. So it makes sense to them. And like, hey, Gonzalo, you are there. You already know the area. You can assist me better instead of trying to buy somewhere else. So many of these foreign customers are going to have local connections. So you can start in your local market. You don't need to go abroad. Now, you could. I'm going to talk about it too. But don't feel like your first thing to do is just, invest money and fly to other countries. So pay attention to your demographics. Okay. Notice what kind of restaurants, what kind of cultural events are starting. Pay attention to other markets. So I'm here in Jacksonville, Florida. If you're not familiar, Jacksonville is in the northeast corner of the state. We are 2 hours from Orlando. So, for example, something that I personally pay a lot of attention to is the Orlando market. Why? Because here in Florida, the most common place or the most known place is Miami. Then comes Orlando because of Disney. So it is common, there is a lot of investments in Miami, then people start going to Orlando, but Orlando starts to get expensive, like it has in recent years, all over the US. So a lot of people start looking outside those areas, like, hey, this is getting unaffordable. So we tend to get a lot of customers who were thinking about Orlando and they decide, no, it doesn't work anymore. Where can I go? And then find us because we are just 2 hours away. So I pay attention to the Orlando market. And something that I noticed in the Orlando market years ago was how many more Brazilian investments there were there. And I tell you, I told the agency in my local market, get ready because that's going to happen here in Jacksonville. And yes, in recent years, that's exactly what has happened. We have seen an increase on Brazilian investments here in Northeast Florida. Okay. And you can tell because there are parts of town that we can drive by and you can see Brazilian grocery store, Brazilian restaurant, Brazilian cafe. You start hearing Portuguese being spoken more. So pay attention to your local market demographics, what cultural groups are there, what restaurants are there. Realtor.com also has analytics where you can check from which country they are looking into your local market. Okay, so Realtor.com has this analytic where you can say, okay, in this zip code, in this city, viewers of properties, where are they viewing them from? And it's going to tell you, that includes other countries. And it can tell you, people from, the UK and looking for properties in your market area. So pay attention to that. So start local, connect with people locally. Now, if you want to go abroad, you say like, hey, Gonzalo, I want to go out there and meet people. Okay, so that's what I'm going to call global reach. You want to get out. So one is international expos, where you can travel and participate. A little over a week ago, I just came back from France. I was participating in MIPIM, that is one of the largest real estate expos, international expos. And so I was there trying to connect with, investors and, companies from all over the world. And, oh, thank you, Juan. So there is an opportunity in June. I'm going to London for a place in the sun. Now, let me tell you the difference between these two events, because you need to know where you're going and who is going there. So with MIPIM, there is a lot of companies. Okay, it is a lot of countries, cities actually have a representation there. So it is at a higher level. Like, for example, with Florida, we took our economic development liaison for Europe, Why? Because it's a little more, like, hey, I'm looking for a house, but it's learning more about opportunities, at a bigger level. Now, a place in the sun is different. A place in the sun actually is customer driven. A place in the sun is an expo about second homes, vacation homes. So it is, there are two, the one that we're going is in London. And so the people who come to this expo, actually, they are people who are thinking about buying a second home. They are UK buyers thinking, I want a second home. So we are there, we are Florida. There is Spain, there is Greece, there is France, Turkey. Last year, Turkey was big. Something that I noticed in MIPIM this year was Egypt. Egypt had a lot of presence. So I'm going to be looking, what opportunities might be out there, what they're putting themselves out there so much. So for example, the way we approach those events is going to be different. Okay, like when we're going to a place in the sun, something that we're planning to do this year actually is to feature properties, because something that we discovered last year when we were there is a lot of people came and wanted to see what they can buy. Why? Because they were buyers. Okay, we were talking to big time investors. They don't care about specific properties, but customers do. So when you're attending these expos, understand who is going to be your audience and how you can connect with them and what kind of information you're going to provide. For example, something that I did and I shared last week in our group, like I did this postcard that I take for my international trips. And it mentioned Jacksonville. By the way, I put where Jacksonville is because most people don't know what it is. So it's right here on the northeast corner. And on the back side, I just have a lot of information about Jacksonville. So why? Because I wanted to be able to pass it out so people can know, okay, something that they can take and see how, our market can be an opportunity for international customers. So I include information about population, median sales price, average temperature, how many beaches we have, golf courses, things that I believe international customers might be appealed to. Now, something that I can tell you I did is also when I included my median sales price and the distances, I'm using meters and square meters in addition to feet. Why? Remember, metric system is most commonly used in other countries. So little details you have to keep in mind. Something else that on this postcard, you see the backside, it has our contact information, but it does not have our pictures, which is intentional. Why? Because internationally, many times it's seen when you include the picture in your marketing, even in your business card, as being what some people consider here in America, we are too salesy, too pushing too much ourselves instead of caring about the customer. So when you're thinking about reaching out, especially you're going to be traveling abroad, educate yourself about practices, because it really does make a difference, how people can feel related to you. What else you can do? Target ads. Like, great thing about platforms like Facebook, if you're using social media, you can do ads that are going to only be pushed to residents on a specific market area. So that's an option that you have. Websites. So something you can do with your websites and is have your website translated to multiple languages. Now, I tell you, probably like 15 years ago, I will tell people, yeah, I don't know about that because, these translations are not good, but they are so good nowadays. They're not perfect, but they're really good. So something you can do is have your website available in multiple languages so people can, read information in a way that it is more approachable to them. The only thing that I would say is be careful not to give the impression that you speak that language if you don't. Okay, so definitely you have to be careful. Now, something that I'm going to tell you, if you decide to have a specific country or a specific area in a country as a target market, something to consider. If especially you're gonna travel, I said, hey Gonzalo, I figured out that there is a lot of customers from the UK coming to my local market. Like, I want to go to London and be able to connect with people. And I would say that's a bad idea, but something that you could consider instead is actually connecting with agents in that market. Why agents? Because these are the people who already know people. Okay. Instead of going to London and be like, okay, where do I find people who are interested in buying the US? Why don't you connect with the agents, the real estate practitioners in that specific country, and say like, hey, let me tell you about opportunities in my market in case you have somebody. Because we know how it works, not for everybody, but I know that if one of my customers is thinking about buying a property in Spain, it's very likely they're going to contact me and be like, hey, Gonzalo, do you know anything about buying properties in other countries, especially because I promote myself as a global practitioner? And I'm going to be like, oh, I'm going to refer you to somebody. I know people in Spain. Okay, where exactly in Spain do you want to go? So I think the local agents can be more beneficial because then you can target a smaller and a specific group. Now, that doesn't mean that you cannot do events for customers. Like a friend from Miami, like he was telling me that what he did is a lender and another business partner, they flew down to Peru, rented a hotel room, not a room, but a salon, I must say, I'm sorry. No, he didn't bring customers to the room. I want to make that clear. I don't want anybody to start rumors. But they rented a salon in the hotel, and they just ran an ad in the newspaper, come over to learn how to buy a property in Miami. And they said they had a packed room, okay? So, but it had to be planned, okay? You can just not show up in a country and you're not able to meet people. So if you are thinking about doing a travel abroad, try to connect with people out there. I will strongly encourage you to get in touch with the NAR Global Ambassador for that country. We have NAR Global Ambassadors for most countries, not all of them, but they can be a great resource. They can tell you who to get in. If you want to get in touch with agents, like what is the association that is a bilateral partner with NAR? How can you get in touch with them and organize presentations? I have gone to other countries and done presentations for their local real estate association. Okay? Or at least they can tell you about practices in that area. If you want to learn more about NAR Global, you can go to nar.realtor/global. Again, nar.realtor/global. And then you can see all how to locate a global ambassador and all the resources that we have. Something that we have on the NAR website also is practices on countries. So you can do your own research right there. All right, so now let's talk specific about working with customers. So let's say that now you find a buyer. They want to buy a property in your local market. Very important, set up expectations, okay? How things are going to happen. The way we practice real estate here in the US can be extremely different than the way real estate is practiced in other countries. I can tell you one of the main differences between the way we practice here in the US and the way it's practiced in other countries is MLS. In most countries, they do not have an MLS or don't have an MLS that it is as used extensively like we do here in the US. What it means is buyers are not familiar with the concept of if I hire you, you're going to be able to research properties listed by other brokers. Some buyers might believe that they need to contact different brokers to see what each broker has to offer. Okay, so be sure that you dedicate time explaining the process, what they can expect, what they cannot expect. Okay, you need to go to every step of the process. Trust me, you don't want to get surprised at the end when somebody says, "Oh, I was not expecting this." Because I tell you, so this one, I was telling about the investor from Argentina. So, short story. When I was selling them the very first property, okay, so their cash transaction, day before closing, the title company sends the HUD, back then was the HUD, we didn't have closing disclosure, sends the HUD, I do a long call to Buenos Aires, to my customers, hey, we have the final amount. You need to wire the money to the title company. And my customer is like, okay, but when am I going to get the title? And I say, oh, the title, will come in a few weeks once it gets recorded. And the customer is like, what? You're asking me to wire the money and I'm not going to get the title for weeks? Like, no, like, how do I know that they're not going to keep my money and never give me the title? And I'm like, well, if you want it, I can, once it gets recorded, I can get a copy from the property appraiser side, and I can email it to you. And they're like, email it to me? Like, it's not like a piece of paper with a seal that says that this property is mine. And I say, not really, it's just a piece of paper, some of the seller notarized that has been recorded in market records. And he's like, what? And you're asking me to send all this money? And they were extremely hesitant to send the money, extremely hesitant. Now, we have built a great relationship that after a 30 minutes long distance call to Argentina, they say, Gonzalo, we're going to send the money, but just be aware we don't feel comfortable with this. And they send the money and everything was fine. Now, I must say, since then, now they like to send the money even ahead. Hey, Gonzalo, can you find out how much money we have to send so we can send ahead of the time to, save some time? So not that they know the process, they feel way more comfortable. But imagine if that transaction would have fallen through at the last minute because they didn't feel comfortable sending the money. So explain the process to the detail, okay? That way you avoid surprises later. And like I mentioned, the business practices can be very different from country to country. I mentioned that a lot of transactions might be cash. However, some can be financed. Now, when we talk about international customers, we have what we call two types. We got type A and type B. Type A is foreign people, meaning they are not U.S. citizens, but they live here in the U.S. Okay, they either has a resident card or green card, or they have a visa that allows them to live and work here in the U.S. Okay. And then we have the type B. Type B is foreign people. They do not work, they do not live here in the US. So if somebody is here already in the US and they have either a green card, a visa, or some kind of permit that allows them to work and live here, they can access to the same loan products as US citizens. Okay, so the financing is exactly the same. They have a social security number, they're supposed to be filing taxes. So the process is the same. Now, when it is a non-resident, meaning somebody who doesn't work, their income is in another country, they live in another country, then that's considered a national foreigner. And then financing gets trickier there. Usually down payment is going to be larger. The bank is going to require some documentation regarding credit. Documentation has to be translated to English because the bank the underwriter, it has to be able to read everything. So it might take a little longer. Now, I'll tell you something with a national foreign financing. It can be very easy. Why? Because documentation is limited. Because somebody here in the US is expected to have more paperwork, more things that can be traced. When it's an international customer, it's actually there is only so much documentation that the bank has. Now, it's very straightforward. Either you have them or you don't, but the banks don't like middle points. Now, recently I got in touch with a lender who has a program where actually he can do it without documentation if income documentation, if they have good credit and they're putting a very decent down payment. So there can be some alternatives. Here is what is important, guys. Get familiar with lenders who offer financing for foreign nationals. Understand what the guidelines are. So that way, when you meet with this customer for the first time, you can give clear expectations of what the financing is going to take, like what kind of down payment, what kind of interest rate they can get. Okay, like I tell them, I'm going to Peru and taking with me financing information that I'm going to share with the people who already told me have an interest to purchase here. Who can buy property in the States? Almost anybody. There are some restrictions, especially with property close to any of our borders, certain citizens of what we call hostile countries against the U.S. So yes, there are some restrictions on the agricultural side. There can be some restrictions, but besides that, on your everyday transactions, almost anybody can buy here in the U.S. Do you need to come to the U.S. or have a visa to come to the U.S. to purchase a property? And the answer is actually no. If you're getting financing, the lender will require you to come at least once to the U.S. usually. But if you're buying cash, you don't even need to show up in the U.S. Okay, we have foreign buyers with cash who have never ever come to the U.S. for a transaction. Okay, now if somebody asks you, hey, I want to buy a property, in New York or whatever area you cover, ask them why. Every once in a while, you might come across somebody who says, oh, because I want to buy a property, so that way I can have a visa to come to the U.S. Some people might have the perception that if you own a property in the U.S., that grants you the access to come to the country, and that is not correct. Okay, actually, having a property sometimes can make it harder to get a visa because the consulate, the embassy, and the country of origin might be concerned that the person not having a property might be looking to stay in the U.S., which makes it harder to give them a visa. So sometimes actually can play the opposite way. But yes, be aware, if somebody tells you, hey, I want to buy a property in the US because I want to be able to get a visa, that's not how it works. Now, there is a special visa for investors. The most common one is the EB-5. There is a visa that if somebody invests so much money here in the US in a business, they can get a green card to come here, okay? But again, for that, you need to become from contact an immigration attorney who is familiar with EB-5 visas, who can explain you what the requirements are. And if you ever have a customer who expressed that interest, what you need to do is put them in touch with the attorney and let them handle that. Now, you do not need a social security number to buy a property. If you remember in your transactions, when it's a cash buyer, nobody asks for the social security number. If there is financing, yes, because the lender needs, social security number. But you notice in your cash transaction, nobody needs a security number. However, if you have a foreign buyer who says, hey, I want to buy a property and I'm going to use it as a vacation home, but well, I'm not using it as a vacation. I'm going to use it as an, income property, or I'm just going to rent it. I'm going to see this as an investment. Anybody who is earning an income in the US must pay taxes for that income. Okay, so again, anybody earning income in the US must pay taxes for that income. So if somebody is buying a property and has the intention to use it to generate income, they need to apply for an IT. Okay, that is a tax identification number. They do that with the IRS and say, hey, I need a tax ID number. You have to say why. I'm buying a property and I'm planning to rent it. And that's extremely important. Now, when they're thinking about selling the property, they're going to need a tax ID number. Okay, so somebody buys it and like, hey, I'm just going to use it as a vacation home. I'm not going to generate any income. All right, you're fine then. But be aware that the day you decide to sell it, before you sell it, you're going to need a tax ID number, an IT. Okay, so let people know that that's a process that they're going to have to do at some point, unless they're never planning to sell the property. Okay, now when it comes to foreign buyers, something that I always say, I get Cuba Gooding Jr. and Jerry Maguire on them, and it's show me the money. Okay, again, a lot of these transactions are cash. So what I mean by show me the money, if somebody says, I have cash, I'm going to buy the property cash. My first question is, where is the money? Is it in the US or is it in another country? If it's in the US, great. Makes my life way easier. Because for closing, the only thing that they need to do is transfer the money from their US bank account to the title company, closing a attorney, whoever it is, done. Now, they say, oh no, Gonzalo, I have the money in a different country. Okay, no biggie. My next question, if they say they have the money in a different country, is the money in US dollars or a different currency? Okay. If they say it's in US dollars already, okay, perfect. Then the only thing that we have to worry about is to get the money from whatever country it is here to the US. Okay. Guys, it can be as simple as a wire transfer and the money can be here in the US in 24 hours, or sometimes it can take a long time, or sometimes can be impossible to wire the money. Okay. Certain countries have restrictions on money leaving their country. Okay, so even if they have it in their country, they might not be able to get it here in the US. So if somebody has the money in a different country, start planning. How are we going to get that money from there to here? They need to contact their financial institution and ask, can I send this money to the US? What are the requirements? And my suggestion is that the money is sent way ahead of the time. Because if it takes too long, if they wait until the last minute, it can take too long and the money won't be here for closing. Now, if they say, oh, but money is in another country and it is not in US dollar, okay, now we have double trouble. One is, of course, we got to get it here in the US. Number two is, what if the exchange rate changes between now and the moment that they have to send the money here? Okay, because if it's not in US dollars, it's subject to the exchange rate and the fluctuations. And I tell you, exchange rate fluctuate more often than interest rates. If you think the interest rate go up and down and all, this is crazy. Okay, exchange rates is even worse. I mean, they're changing almost by the minute. Okay, so a decision has to be made by the customer. Is, do I change the money to US dollars and send it now, or do I wait? Okay, Gonzalo, why would somebody want to wait? Because they believe that the exchange rate is going to get better. And I don't want to exchange it now because I'm going to be able to save money if I wait. Well, what if it gets worse? So that is a risk. But the customers need to understand that the risk exists and they're going to have to make that decision. Okay? Customers who like to be on the safe side, probably I'm going to say, let's exchange it to US dollars, let's send it to the US, let's not take chances. Customers who like to take a little more of a risk, they might say, well, let's wait, let's see what happens. Let's say the exchange gets better, but be aware, that they can lead that if things, change too fast, too much, it might affect their ability to complete the transaction. Now, if you're working with sellers, so the first thing that you need to be aware of is extremely important, FIRPTA. So I was telling you that when somebody needs to sell a property, if they are a foreign person, okay, again, this is a person who does not live here in the US. Again, if you have somebody from Panama who already lives and works in the US and they have a social security number here in the US and they file taxes every year, this does not apply to them. Okay, so just because somebody is not a US citizen doesn't apply to them. If they're non-US citizens, but they live and work here in the US and they have a social security number and pay taxes, they're all good. This is for sellers who do not live, do not work here in the US. They don't pay taxes usually here in the US. Okay, so how does FIRPTA work? Well, let me explain you first why it was created, so you understand why this process exists. So before the 80s, early 80s, a foreign seller could sell the property here in the US, get all their proceeds, wire the money to their own country. Now, here's the problem that I told you earlier, that anybody who earns money here in the US has to pay taxes. Some of these sellers were making a very good profit on the sale of their properties, but they were never coming back to pay their taxes. Why? They're not here. Like, if one of us don't pay our taxes, you know that the IRS is going to go after us. They're going to get their money. They'll find a way to get their money from us. But when it's a foreign person, the IRS don't have the ability to go to that country and say, hey, you owe me money. I'm gonna take it from your bank account, or I'm gonna put, lien on your salary, or whatever it is. So because of that, in the early 80s, FERTA was established. And the idea of FERTA is, number one, FERTA is not a tax, it's a withholding. And some people get confused on this. FERTA is not a tax, it is a withholding. The idea of FERTA is that when a foreign person sells a property, part of the sales proceeds are going to be withheld. And it's going to be a large amount. Why is going to be a large amount? The hope of the IRS is that the amount is going to be larger than the amount of tax that this person really needed to pay. Why? Because if the IRS withholds $50,000 from the sales of my property, and my taxes should have been only $15,000, I'm for sure coming back to file my taxes and say, hey, IRS, you took 50 when I only should have paid 15. Can you give me my 35,000 back? And the IRS will give them back once the person files for their taxes. Okay, so FERTA is intentionally large. It's a withholding that forces that person to come back and file taxes. So how much is FERTA withholding? Is between 10 to 15% of the sales price. 10 to 15% of the sales price. Not of the profits, the sales price. And I'll tell you, years ago, the pandemic, so we have this customer from England. They sold their property here. And so it was a $1.5 million transaction. So FERTA was 15% for them. So that was like $225,000. Okay. Now here the detail, they were not making a profit. Actually, they were losing money in that house because they have done a lot of renovation to the property. So technically they were losing money, but FERTA doesn't care. FERTA said you have to give me 15% of the sales price, and it was $225,000. Here is what made it worse for them, that the closing was scheduled for January. So on January 2021, 15% of that sales proceed got withheld. It was $225,000. Now, once they file their taxes and they prove that they didn't make a profit, they will get their money back. Well, when do you file your taxes for 2021? You don't file them until 2022, which meant that they will have to wait a full year to get their money back. Okay. Now, for those kind of situations, or any situation where the withholding might be excessive, there are waivers. Okay. So something that we did is we put in touch our customers with a company that specializes on FERTA withholdings. And what this company did is they sent a waiver request to the IRS showing that they were not making money, or they were not making that much money, if that was the case, and asked the IRS either to waive FERTA or to reduce the amount of the withholding to be more reasonable. Okay, so if you're ever dealing with that situation, be aware that those waivers can be requested. Now, here in the deal in detail, you cannot ask for a waiver until you have a contract to sell. So somebody can be like, oh, I'm planning to sell my house, I'm going to ask IRS a waiver, because you got to show how much money you're going to make before the IRS can decide to give you a waiver or not. Be aware also that the FERTA withholding applies to property management, meaning that if somebody does property management for a foreign owner and they're collecting rent, 30% of the rent also has to be sent to the IRS as a withholding. Okay, so it's not only for sales, it also applies to property managers. So again, working with sellers, set up expectations, explain every part of the process. I was talking about this customer from the UK. You know what happened? Like 2 months later, after we closed, they called me and they're like, hey, Gonzalo, we just got notification that our cable service is still on. And I say, well, did you cancel it? And they're like, no, we didn't you? And I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, I thought you were gonna cancel all our services. And I say, no, I can't. I cannot call Xfinity and cancel their cable service. Gonzalo, we didn't know because here in the UK, when we sell a property or agent cancel all our services, never had crossed my mind. Okay, ever since when I have a foreign seller, I'm bringing that up just in case. Hey, by the way, before closing, don't forget to cancel all your services. I cannot. Okay, it's creating those expectations of what is going to happen. Explain every process. In other countries, and actually even here in some states here in the US, I don't know if you guys have this, but sellers stay in the property after closing. Okay, like here in Florida, that doesn't happen. So every single detail, because in business practice can be different. Be aware also that most every transaction that I have had recently, title companies or closing agents will not wire money to another country. Okay, meaning that the seller needed to have a bank account here in the US, and they will send the funds to that US bank account. And why this? Because there can be tax liabilities too. One time I was working with this customer from Mexico. We sold their property here, and she found out that if she was to get the money from the sale here in the US, sent to Mexico, she was going to have to pay taxes in Mexico for that money, even though she already was paying taxes here in the US. Okay. Now, you are not supposed to be a tax expert in every country. So, but you need to make your customers aware, sellers aware, hey, contact, a tax specialist in your country and understand what tax liabilities you might be facing if the money from the US gets sent to their country. Okay. So again, take the time to set up the expectations and cover the whole sales process. Guys, I have told you about, hey, you might need to contact an immigration attorney. Hey, you might need to contact an accountant. You might need to find a lender who understands foreign transactions. You have to create a team. If you are not already working on in global real estate, it is something that you want to do. Start already working on creating that team. Those who have been practicing probably already have a team in place, because you realize really quickly how important that is. So if you don't have one, start working with a team. A great resource is always your local global council. I'm very involved at the Global Council here at my local association. Actually, I'm going to share or North Florida Association of Realtors Global Business Council. Why? Because if I need help, I can contact my council. I can go, we have a Facebook page, and I can go there and I say, hey, does anybody know a lender familiar with this? Or does anybody knows a lender who speaks Mandarin or, whatever language? Or, does anybody have an specialist on this topic? So it is a great way to start building your team, connecting with other agents who are already practicing the business. I mentioned earlier, be very careful also with cultural differences. The way we interact with people here in the US and other countries might be different than the way it happens in other parts of the world. And that's why most cultures are divided into two, what we call high context cultures and low context cultures. Here in the US, we're on a low context culture. High context culture, very familiar, very popular, common in Latin America, Western Europe, in South Europe, Africa, Asia, Russia, high context culture, low context culture, US, Canada, Northern Europe, Australia, actually. And it's funny because actually most low context cultures are associated with cold weather and high context culture with warmer weather. Australia is one of the biggest exceptions, and it's mainly because the UK is more of a low context, and Australia was a UK colony, and that's what they have more of a low context culture. So you understand the difference now, which is the most important part. In high context cultures, personal relationships are extremely important. Oh no, Gonzalo, but I live here in the US, and of course I care about personal relationships. Like I care about my customers, I care about my friends and family. We're talking at a higher level. and how people see you and how people are perceived is extremely important. Like, for example, I was telling you that, we just came back from France, and I was in France and I was with somebody else from my state association. And something that one of them brought up is like, geez, it takes they never bring the check here. Like, why are they not bringing the check? I said, because we have not asked for it. Like I said, we're in Europe in an area of a high context culture. Like when I go to Spain often. I like it there. In Spain, you have to ask for a check. Like here in the US, it's not uncommon that you go to a restaurant and the waitress must say, hey, here's the check, no rush, whenever you're ready. Okay. Because hey, here it is, no biggie. Okay. In other cultures, that is seen as offensive. Like if the server brings the check and leaves it on your table, it's like they're kicking you out. And they're seen that way. They're gonna be that disrespectful. So they're gonna wait until you ask for the check because they don't want to be the one to bring it, because they don't want to come across as not being polite. So that what I was telling you is like when we talk about here in the US we're a low context culture, we don't get as much as personal relationships. Don't get confused, like we don't care at all. It's taken to a whole different level. Okay. Here in the US, it's okay to call somebody and go to the point. Hey, this is Gonzalo with ABC Realty. Really quick, we need to get this done. Does that work? Yes. All right, perfect. All right, awesome. Talk to you later. And nobody gets offended. Okay. In a high context culture, I make the same phone call and they can be like, wow, well, that was rude. Gonzalo just called and he's talk about business and that was it. Like that's all that he cares about. Okay. So be aware because those differences, can affect your relationship with potential customers, and they might feel that you don't care about them as much, and they might not trust you with their business because they feel you're not culturally connecting with them. Now, language, guys. This might come as a shocker to some of you, but the hour is almost over, so I have to confess this part. English is not my first language. I know, shocker. I know some of you are like, what? I didn't see that coming, but it's true. I do speak Spanish. I was raised in Peru. I was born in Peru. So yes, being able to speak Spanish and English definitely has helped me a lot with my global reach. However, it's not necessary to speak another country. We have worked with customers from all over the world, and many customers where English was not their first language either, but that was our language in common. Okay, so be prepared of that and be ready to respect that. And I always love to tell this story, a true story. I had this customer from Romania a long time ago. It was a Romanian couple, and we're going to see houses. And something that I perceive or noticed when I was showing them houses is that when they were talking to each other, they were speaking English. And that got my attention because I find that as common. So I asked them, hey guys, I noticed that you speak English to each other. Is that common? Is that what you speak at home? And they're like, oh, no, Gonzalo, when you just asked, we speak Romanian. But since you are here, we want to be respectful and speak English, in front of you. And I said, thank you so much. That's extremely kind of you that you feel that way. However, here's what I want you to do. If you're going to talk to each other and you don't need me to be part of the conversation, I say, please speak Romanian. Whenever you need me, just switch back to English and I'll be here to help you. Now, why did I ask them to speak Romanian? Number one, have you ever shown a house and when the customer start placing their furniture in the house, like they're like, oh, we can put the TV here and the piano goes here and the living room set, they start visioning themselves living in the property. You feel like, okay, they like this. They feel at home. Okay. Well, for me, that is very important. So these were customers who, when they're at home, they speak Romanian, but when they're at somebody else's house, they speak English. I didn't want them to feel they were in somebody else's house. I wanted them to feel that they could be their home. So I wanted to speak Romanian because that's what home felt like. And number two reason why I asked them to do that is because I showed them that I trusted them, that I didn't need to know every single thing they were discussing. Trust is something that you cannot demand. Trust is something you can only earn. And I wanted to earn their trust. And I showed them that I trusted them. And that was the sign for them to know that they also could trust me. Okay. Guys, be very careful to ask people where they're from. Okay. I noticed a tricky point when talking about global customers. Remember that national origin is a protected class under or federal fair housing law. Asking somebody's nationality is the same as asking somebody what's your religion, what's your race, do you have children, do you have a disability? They are all protected classes, okay? Never ask people where they're from, much less make assumptions, okay? Like sometimes outside of real estate, I will meet people and they're like, oh, where are you from? Are you from Mexico? Just because they realize they have a Latin accent, okay? Actually, that can be considered very disrespectful, and not like, oh, don't tell me I'm from Mexico. That's, that Mexico is a bad place. No, it's just not my country. I'm from Peru. I'm originally from Peru. Okay. Actually, the other day, somebody asked me, what's your nationality? And I said, I'm a US citizen. And they're like, really? Yes, really. Okay. It always a person who is ignorant and doesn't understand how to connect with other people. Be very careful with the slang or with jokes. It does not translate easy. People sometimes look at jokes. So I say avoid many jokes unless you can really sense that your customers are gonna get it. Be very careful. One more thing with language is very important. Oh, Gonzalo, I know a little bit of Spanish or French or German, so if I get a customer, or sometimes I try to learn a few words in their language. I'll say, if you're going to try to learn words in a language that you're not fluent at, ask somebody who is fluent to double check your pronunciation. Slight changes on sound can mean a whole different thing in another language. And you think you're looking all cutesy, saying something in somebody else's language, and you might be disrespectful. So you're gonna practice your language skills and languages you're not fluent, and just be sure you double check with somebody else. Okay. Finally, be very careful. Negotiation might be different in this kind of transactions. Don't mix social time with business negotiations. Those should be taken different. Sometimes decisions are made in groups or by family. Your customer might be one person, but the decision is a family decision. Okay. Be sure that you're using an interpreter, that you still keep eye contact with your customer. Okay. You're not to look at the interpreter, because here's what it looks like. Let's say, imagine you're my customer and I'm telling the interpreter, please tell them blah, blah, blah. I'm losing the eye contact with my customer. Okay. So if you're using an interpreter, always keep eye contact with your customer. The interpreter will do their job and do the translation. But you want your facial expressions, your nonverbal communication to still be sent to your customer. Please avoid loud or slow English. Here is what sometimes I see. Hi, how are you? My name is Gonzalo. Welcome to our country. Okay, you're gonna come across as you have a problem. Okay, if you think the person might have issues understanding English, definitely, don't speed up. Okay, double check, add things in writing, but that kind of like very loud, slow English, like, like the other person, doesn't know the language, it can be very disrespectful. Okay, be aware that sometimes Asians will agree with you, even if they don't. So avoid yes or no questions. Like, did you like it? The answer might be always yes. And they like everything when they didn't. It's much better to ask, what do you like? What do you dislike? Okay. Be careful when you're at meals. Don't be drinking if your customer is not drinking. Okay. Be very careful not to come across as disrespectful of their culture. So follow their lead. Always see what your customer is doing and try to follow that. I think the next one is very important for all customers. About discussion about religion, politics, border disputes, military. I think right now it's a bad time to be talking about any of these things with anybody, unless you are a friend and but business is something you should avoid. And be aware that in other contracts, in other countries, contracts can be changed at any time. Okay. Something that I explain to all my customers is once a contract gets executed, that's what it is. And the only way it's going to change if it all parties agree to. In other countries, they're used to change contracts just like this. Like, oh, tell the seller that we're going to close in another 3 weeks. Well, we'll see if they agree. No, just tell them. No biggie. Yeah, just biggie. Okay. So it's explained really clearly in the beginning how it works. But anyway, so I went a little 2 minutes over, but I want to be sure I cover everything. Here is all my contact information. I have shared with Evan the PowerPoint. So if you guys want a copy, I'm sure that he can share it with you. But if you have any questions, I will have some extra time. So if anybody has any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Thank you so much, Gonzalo, for all of your time with this and for paying attention to the Q&A and answering the questions as they came in a little bit. We'll give everyone a couple of moments to see if they have any other questions, but I mean, your presentation was super thorough. And I really enjoyed, as someone who speaks very fast, I really enjoyed you pointing out that not to slow down your speech. People, even if they don't understand you, understand that you are slowing down. And unless they tell you to slow down, and I have been told to slow down, you want to take the cues from everyone that's around you.
Yeah, and I would say, if you think that there is some, language barrier and, maybe they don't understand me, best thing to do is put it in writing. Most people can, if any of you have learned a second language, you know that in the beginning, you learn easier to read than to listen. So if any of you think, hey, I'm not sure if they're getting it right, I will say put it in writing. Oh, Always asking, is Lima back to normal, safe to visit? Yeah, I would say you have to be careful. I would refer it. We have some riots at the end of last year. Things has come down some. I'm going to an area that is safer, so I'm not as concerned. I've been there multiple times. So, but yeah, you have to be careful regardless. Anytime you go, where you go, just stay up to date.
And I think that kind of goes with everything, I think even if you go to visit a different place in America, you always want to be a little bit more conscious of what's going on.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, John, for the comment. Sherilyn, yeah, you got to go. Thank you for being here today.
Awesome. Well, I think we'll close out the meeting right now. I wanted to thank you so much for being here. I know you and I actually connected through international traveling. We met at Sierra in Spain a couple of years ago. So it's great to finally bring you to our association and do something on a local level a little bit. It's been great for you to help us close out Global Success Month. I also want to thank all of the attendees who've been with us throughout the month, whether you attended one of our webinars, attended our in-person global breakfast, or just helped us celebrate by sharing things that we've been posting on social media. Remember that while we end this month, it doesn't mean that global real estate opportunities are also ending. These opportunities are all around. LIBOR is here to help maintain and help you get through these difficult transactions. To stay current with LIBOR Global, you can join our Facebook group, or you can join one of our monthly webinars that we host, Travel Abroad Virtually with LIBOR. This is a series that we feature different countries every month. And also, you can find out everything that's going on by visiting our website, lirealtor.com/global. Have a great rest of the day, and global is local.
See you, everybody.